This week on World Stories. Drought hits Kenya, a country facing disaster. HIV/AIDS in Russia, epidemic of denial. But first, we visit Texas, where there are barriers along many parts of the U.S.-Mexican border. DW spoke to ranchers near Brownsville about President Trump's plans to build a wall. The reaction was mixed.
The border fence cuts through his land. No matter where Rusty Monsis goes, it's almost always in sight. Monsis has spent his life here on the border with Mexico, and all too often he watches drugs and people were smuggled into the US. Monsis says each year it has gotten steadily worse. That's why he voted for Donald Trump, and that's why Monsis is for Trump's border wall.
Until Mexico cleans up its own government to stop more of the illegal activities, we will need this wall. Because the United States is a big marketplace for illegal drugs, for illegal people.
2/3 of his land lies between the Rio Grande River, which forms a natural border to Mexico, and the border fence. Each day, Monsis travels back and forth through one of the transit points. Monsis suffers from cancer. He says if the government needs his land to build the new wall, he's ready to sell.
Actually, I love this property. I was raised here. But I'm in a medical situation. All the stress and everything is not helping what I've got.
Just next door lives Pamela Taylor. When the border fence was built here 10 years ago, she found herself living between the Rio Grande and the fence. Effectively, her home is no man's land. She knows every border guard here. But in spite of this, she doesn't feel safe. Not long ago, drugs were found on her property.
You have to be alert. You have to make sure that your doors are locked. You have to make sure that if you go out, your windows must be closed and everything. I mean, there are so many things that you have to do to make yourself safe.
Pamela Taylor does not want a border wall between the US and Mexico. She says the old border fence has achieved nothing. Taylor wrote numerous letters of complaint to lawmakers, but she no longer trusts politicians. She has a clear message for Donald Trump.
I wanted to call him, and I was going to say, you are doing exactly what our state representatives did to us before. They're bullying it in, and we're going to build a wall. No, no, no. You need to start thinking about the people whose lives you're going to disrupt before you start building that wall.
The 88-year-old wants more patrols and more border guards. And if the government needs her land for its new border wall, Pamela Taylor won't give up easily, because this, she says, is her home.
Drought. The animals are the first to die, then the children. Much of East Africa is currently affected by arid conditions unseen in decades. Kenya has been hard hit, especially Turkana County in the northwest.
Brown Creek water. Cattle farmer Karebu Ibenyo walked half a day to get here, just to get something to drink. But there isn't enough water to go around. Her grandchildren often go thirsty. Food is also scarce. Many of the family's cattle have already died. People here are surviving on the few wild beans they've managed to find. We don't want much from our government. We just need food and water. They should give us that at least. Karebu's mother is weak. She's severely malnourished and in bad need of medical attention. But the medical facilities in Turkana are catastrophic. Most of the people in the region belong to nomadic pastoral tribes. It's desperately underdeveloped, as a visit to a health clinic nearby shows. The door is open, but there's no doctor in sight. Antibiotics, painkillers and cough syrup lie on the floor in open boxes. It's disorganized and dirty. A man comes over to talk to us from a school nearby. He says he's the mathematics teacher there, but he also works in the clinic. He tells us an aid organisation constructed the building, and it's only recently been opened to the public. He says he understands a little bit about medicine. That makes him the doctor around here.
You will see even the register I do today, and the doctor is not around. He gave me responsibility of looking here after he comes. Yeah.
It's unclear when exactly the doctor will come by again. Karebu Ibn Yo says she doesn't rely on the Kenyan government anyway. The Turkana nomad says she just hopes it will rain soon. Then the dried out riverbed behind her hut will once again fill with water. That would save the last of her goats and her family's livelihood.
37 million people worldwide are infected with HIV. In Russia, the infection has reached the middle class. We speak with a woman who talks openly about her illness.
Three in the morning, 4 at night. Olga Yeremeva is 46. She's a businesswoman and a grandmother. She's also HIV positive. Olga discovered her status by chance after an accident put her husband in hospital.
After surgery, the doctor said they couldn't figure out what was wrong. My husband had some virus. At first they thought it could be meningitis.
It was HIV. Olga and her husband had lived with it for years, undetected and untreated. Within months, her husband was dead.
It couldn't be. There was no way it could be HIV. That was always somewhere else, in someone else's life. I was always healthy, always fit.
We cross St. Petersburg to the city's government HIV centre, where Olga receives treatment. But how typical is her case?
We are now seeing the epidemic entering the wider population. The kinds of patients we're seeing, they're not drug users. These are people with families, with children. In most cases, they're being infected by sexual transmission.
Last year saw reported HIV infections in Russia top 100,000, an all-time high. Doctors estimate that the true figure is significantly greater. Of those patients that do know their status, only about a third receive antiretroviral drugs. Without them, patients run the risk of infecting their partners. Olga never considered keeping her HIV status a secret.
It was never a question for me. I never thought about whether I should be afraid of other people's reactions when they heard about it. For me, it's all about making sure the same thing doesn't happen to other people.
That's why she decided to tell her story. It's a timely message, but one that the official figures suggest isn't getting through.
Our last report takes us to Berlin, where we meet Syrian Mohammed Ali Mohammed, a doctor of geography from Aleppo. An academic foundation in Germany has made it possible for him to continue the projects he was working on before being forced to flee.
His world is geography, studying the changes in the Earth's crust. For 2 years, the Syrian Mohammed Ali Mohammed has been able to live and work in Berlin, financed by a fellowship from the Philipp Schwarz Initiative for Threatened Researchers. Mohammed taught at the University of Aleppo until the war in Syria put his life in jeopardy. Once war broke out, our apartment and all of our possessions were destroyed. And I fled with my family and my parents to a village on the border with Turkey. From there, I regularly went to my work at the University of Aleppo. But there was always the danger of being killed by an air raid or by street fighting. In the winter of 2015, Mohammed was able to flee across the border to Turkey. From there, he contacted his former doctoral supervisor in Berlin. He had received his PhD in Germany in 2010, but then he returned to Syria. They stayed in touch, I believe we had the advantage when applying for the fellowship of having long-term personal, academic, and research contacts. And the entire faculty worked together on it. The Philipp Schwarz initiative supports some 70 scientists like Mohammed throughout Germany. It's founded in part via foreign ministry funding, but also from private donors. The researchers come from Syria, Turkey, Yemen, and Sudan. There's no room for science amid war, unrest, and persecution. Scientific work is structured thinking, and for that, a person needs phases of creative peace, which don't exist during times of war. I believe that it cannot exist in the face of an immediate threat of war. Mohammed may be safe here in Germany, but his family is not, even though 2 of his children were born here during his first stay in Berlin. My family is now living in a refugee camp directly on the Syrian-Turkish border. Here in this corner, that's the border. I hope that my family can come to me here in Germany. But now, there's the problem that this border is closed off by the military. And at the moment, there is no solution. Mohammed would return to Syria, but at the moment he has no hope for a peaceful future in his homeland. All he wants is to bring his family to safety here in Germany.